Thank you for tuning in to Ungentrified with Kent Johnson. Ungentrified takes an unfiltered view on pop culture, music, television and film, politics, current events, and topics central to the worldwide Black community. Ungentrified is a safe audio space for celebrating Black culture in its purest form. Thank you for joining another episode of Ungentrified. Of course, it's your boy, Kent. Welcome to the fall. I know I took a little break, but we are back. And I'm excited to talk about today's topic. It's kind of on trend because we are getting into the fall, and that's when people start to reconnect with nature, and that's what we're talking about today. But before we get into that, we do have some current events to talk about. We haven't done this in a while, so are you ready to talk about what's been going on in the news?
I'm ready.
All right. So David Labistor, who is the CEO of Mountain Equipment Co-op, which is a company based out of Canada, recently wrote an open letter, and he posed the question, do white people dominate the outdoors? And he posed that question to answer it in the sense that if they do, he and his company were a part of the problem, because every advertisement that you ever see for skiing, hiking, climbing, camping, anything that deals with nature, it's always a white athlete holding the spotlight. And diversity is a constant thing when it comes to advertising things about outdoor spaces. So he really went on to explain that he's acknowledging the problem and he's going to work to correct it. And there was a lot of response in that field of, in that company space around whether he was right or wrong and what people were doing to address that. And I thought it was perfect for what you and I would be talking about.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you think about that? Do white people dominate the outdoors?
Well, it's funny because I applaud him for at least acknowledging the fact that he wants to do something about it, right? So give him some snaps. I really appreciate when CEOs see a problem and they want to fix it, regardless of how they got there, right? Do white people dominate the outdoors? So I'm from the country, and when you're from the country, everyone was outside, and sometimes by force, right? Your parents say, get outside. Don't come back in here until, it's dark. So I'm from an area where, a lot of my people went outside, and that was something that we did. But as I grew older, and obviously I'm living in Colorado now, you see that. It's very, very obvious that white people do dominate the outdoors. And sometimes I look at it like this. Well, how did we start, right? We didn't even have accessibility to the outdoors, right? We weren't allowed to, Black people, that is, to be allowed to go outdoors, right? Or to be allowed into national parks because of our skin color. So, if you look at it that way, you can already see what occurred as far as where we are today. And this is probably why you see white people are dominated right now. And another reason would probably be cost. People don't think about it, but when you're out doing mountaineering things, it's expensive. I mean, $500 shirts, right? $500 jackets, you name it. The boots are even $500 plus. So it's very expensive. And in addition to that, it's the accessibility. How do you get to where you need to get to the outdoors to really enjoy it? I mean, you can say, well, you can just walk outside, but there are a lot of national parks and things like that are just not accessible for people of color, especially depending on your location.
I agree. And when I asked the question, I was like, ooh, that was a broad question. And we're going to get into that. But before we do, you guys are probably wondering who I've been talking to for the last couple of minutes. and I'm going to let him introduce himself. So go ahead and tell the people who you are.
Hey, people. My name is Jason Swann. I am a financial consultant. I've been a financial consultant. That's what I do on my day job, my 40 hours a week. I've been in the finance field for a little over 7 years now. Right now, the hardest thing that I'm pursuing is my CFP. And for those who don't know that, that's the certification for financial planning and a master's in personal financial planning right now. Very, very, very hard right now. Just pray to God I can get through it. But for the most part, what I love and enjoy doing the most is I'm an avid hiker, backpacker. I love sleeping outdoors under the stars type of guy. I'm a traveler. I'm a basic photographer. I actually enjoy photography. I got some friends that really love it and actually are professionals at it. So I get to learn a lot from them. I just recently got married, so I'm a husband now.
Hey, congrats.
Thank you so much. But I'm an organizer. But last but not least, obviously, I'm founder of Rising Routes, an outdoor organization. And we exist for one purpose, and that's to bring people together. We want to try to normalize people differences, right? Which is a very hard thing to do, to try to shrink that divide. But we want to do it through adventure, outdoors, through common ground and celebrated individuality. Boom, boom, boom.
And when you hear of someone who owns a nature company in the, I guess we can consider Denver the Midwest, right?
No.
No. Is that an insult? I'm sorry. I would take it as an insult.
I don't know. I don't know. I just call us the West for the most part, but we're Mountain Standard Time. So.
Okay, we'll call you the Mountain West then.
Yes.
But if you heard that there was a guy who owned a nature company in the Mountain West of the States, you would not assume that the owner was black. But hey, fun fact, the owner of this company Jason is a black man. And that is why I wanted to invite Jason on to talk about his experience in the outdoors and running a company there and how he feels about the outdoors and its relationship to the black community. So that's why we're here. And that was why we opened up with that open letter. But that open letter opened a lot of doors, and we're going to go through each one of those as we hit this discussion today. But yeah, Jason, one thing that I ask everybody that comes on the show is what's on their radar at the moment. So it could be whatever Netflix hole you've fallen into, what's your jam of the moment, what's your favorite food, like what's on your radar?
Man, oh man, I got a few things, man. I would say, especially when it comes to Netflix, I love movies and I love shows. So I don't know if you've ever checked out what is it called? The Haunting of Hill House.
Yes, I just finished it a couple of days ago.
What did you think?
So it started off all right. Then the middle got really good. Then the last episode, I was just like, "This is how we're gonna end it." This is. I was trying to explain it to a friend of mine, and I said I would call it "This is Scary Us." Like it wasn't necessarily like a scary movie or a scary show, but it was scary in the sense that they were dealing with real like adult family issues.
Right.
So yeah, I would call it "This is Scary Us."
Okay, This Is Us, huh? Yeah, well, my wife loves that This Is Us show, so I have to sit through that every now and then. But other than that, yeah, that and I just recently, about a week ago, I was at the Noonan Center for Performing Arts, and that was hosted by the Graduate School of Social Work, and D. Ray McKeeson was there, and obviously with an activist for the Black Lives Matter movement. And he was speaking and he put on a great performance. I mean, spoke about some really great information that we could take back as organizers with what we're doing. He has a book that I just bought, On the Other Side of Freedom, The Case for Hope. I haven't read it yet. I just bought it and I'm so excited for it to get here. So.
Oh, good stuff. Let's see what's on my radar at the moment. So, as I mentioned, I just finished The Haunting of Hill House as well. I also have been watching, speaking of This Is Us, It's a show called A Million Little Things that's by the writers of This Is Us, but it's about four guys that were best friends. And one of them commits suicide, and it deals with like how everybody's dealing with the aftershocks of him. So it starts off a little morbid, but it's kind of finding its footing now. So that's what's been on my visual radar as far as what I'm watching. What I'm listening to, I've been listening to this new EP by her. She's dropped an EP, so that's been in heavy rotation for me. I'm still off of a high from South Africa, so I've been listening to a lot of house and Afrobeats music as well. So that's what's been in my ear lately. No new books at the moment. I'm looking for my next read to ride me out for the rest of the year. But yeah, those are the things that are on my radar at the moment.
Oh, that's amazing. Good music.
Yes.
Tom Misch. Check him out. Tom Misch.
Yeah, a friend of mine was just at one of his concerts. Was he in DC? It was in like DC or New York. And I've heard some of his stuff. Shout out to Spotify and the Discovery playlist for putting Tom on there a couple of times. So I've heard some of his stuff, but I've never like gone and dug into one of his EPs or albums. So I'm going to bring us back to why I brought you here, Jason, which was to talk about the Black community and their relationship to the outdoors. And you really started to touch on a lot of the points. But the bigger thing is, and I guess we can start there, is that to the outside world, they don't see Black people in nature either, which is clear in the way we're portrayed in any kind of advertising or media that goes to that. As a Black man who owns an adventure-based company, what kinds of situations do you see because of the assumption that Black people don't deal with nature or outdoor-based activities?
Well, I'm seeing a lot of support. Okay, so that's what's great right now. There are a lot of other African American outdoor organizations, and they've been pretty accepting right now, right? There's Outdoor Afro, there's Melanin Base Camp, there's Brown Girls Climb, Black Women's Alliance. So, you know, when which is funny because when I first started this, I absolutely thought I was going to be one of the only Black outdoor organizations for whatever reason. But then I started doing some research and realizing how many other Black organizations exist, outdoor organizations exist. And so I started, reaching out, right? It's just a normal thing to do. Oh my God, there's a Black organization. Let me reach out. Let me talk to them. And in that space, I was able to talk with other outdoor organizations like the Indigenous Women Hike, Native Outdoors, some of these people, and Smile and Nod. And they have been very welcoming here in Colorado. I haven't had a lot of issues, which is very, very reassuring, right? Mm-hmm. I think one of the biggest things that I deal with was myself. It wasn't necessarily someone else. It was like, man, this Black guy starting an organization that's trying to bring people together, and I'm going out and I'm trying to do this on my own, right? Well, not necessarily on my own. I have a partner, but I had to struggle with the thoughts of that some people may say you're not meant to be on this platform, right? You don't know as much as we do, or you're not as educated as we are. You just don't have enough experience. And maybe they're right, but the fact is that I wanted to just immerse myself in it, learn as much as I can, listen as much as I can, and help as many people as I can, get access to the outdoors. And that's the only cause that I have. And I think people don't necessarily, they may see color, but they definitely don't hold it against me.
Are people surprised when they find out about your company and maybe they book an experience and then they show up and here you are?
Well, I think that's the importance of and the accountability that an organization has is, and one of the reasons why we're having this discussion is because someone has said they realize they're not doing enough, and we've only marketed ourselves to a particular culture, which is the Caucasian culture. And so I don't want anybody to be surprised. So, my website, If you go to my website, if you go to my Facebook or Instagram, I want people to see other people of color, right? I want them to see that so they can be inspired to say, hey, I want to do that too. Oh, that girl or that guy is doing it. I want to learn more. And so I think that's the marketing piece of our organization, is that we want to market, diversification. And if we do that, it's hopefully going to compel other people to be involved.
Yeah, because a lot of times you have to see someone who looks like you to even feel like it's possible for you. You know,
Exactly.
that's how we operate in a lot of things. With the work we do with Black and Abroad, we see it all the time where people are like, "Oh, I didn't even know Black folks went to that part of the world." But now that I see that that's something that we do, I'm putting it on my radar. So
I resonate with all of that. That's one of the reasons why I had mentioned, we believe if you're helping humans and you're teaching and you're listening to other humans, is how change is going to happen. And that's honestly, I know one guy not naturally one guy, but Delray McKeeson, he had mentioned one of the quotes that he was speaking on at this event I went to, is that some people are in love with the idea of resistance instead of the work of resistance, right? And so, that spoke to me. I was like, well, I'm glad I'm doing this, and I need to keep doing it as much as possible. And
what's the ratio of like Black hikers that you have on your experiences?
it's funny. So if you if you live in Colorado, you realize, man, when I moved out here, I was like, man, it's going to be just a lot of, more liberal Black people, because I was coming from Nebraska, right? And prior to that, Sparta, Georgia, and then Atlanta. And so I noticed that when I moved here, there wasn't hardly any Black people. And so
Is that was that in comparison to Nebraska or just in general? I would think that it would be far more in Denver than in Nebraska. But please let me know.
That's what I thought. And it's just not the case, as far as per population or whatever. So, but anyway, so it was just looking, and I was like, okay, so I ended up joining. When I moved to Colorado, I saw how beautiful it was. I fell in love with the outdoors, so I ended up joining Colorado Mountain Club, and because I wanted to learn how to survive out there, right? And if I'm going to be out there, I want to learn everything I need to know to survive. And they taught me so much. But one of the things that I was I didn't necessarily like about attending these type of organizations is that there wasn't enough diversification, right? I didn't see enough of my own people, and that kind of just kind of rubbed me wrong a little bit. And then it's not only the fact that there's not enough diversification, but there are some very, very experienced people in the outdoor industry. And sometimes they don't necessarily want to share their skills with someone who is of lesser skill set, right? It's almost like a club. And so you can't really get into those clubs very easily. And so I told myself, you know what? I'm going to start my own organization, and this is what I'm going to try to do, is bring more diversification. I'm going to bring skilled people in where, these people who don't know anything would be taught by some of the best people. And it's not like a boys or girls club, right? But the ratio that I have right now, to answer your question, is probably 2 on average. And that'll be 2 out of the 7 that may join on an excursion.
Also, that's not as bad as I thought. I thought you were saying 2 total, as in like who've ever come. No, I'm playing.
No.
And then when you compare that to the population of where you're at, then it makes sense. So
it makes perfect sense.
Yeah. But it's crazy you brought up this idea of kind of like the old boys club and how that is something that's still very much prevalent in that area of sports or of activity. And I can only imagine the kinds of conversations that you've had or that people have had about you when you started creating your company and really entering that space. Why do you think that things like hiking, camping, backpacking, what have you, get labeled as a quote unquote white thing?
Huh. Man, that's a great question. That's a great question because again, I think media definitely plays a part on that, right? Because you're not seeing a lot of our faces or any other culture for that matter being displayed on a lot of outdoor organizations. So um, on TV and whatnot. So that's one part of it, right? We don't see ourselves out there, so we call it a white thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
I have a cousin. Every time he goes out hiking or backpacking or he skis or yeah, he says that he's out here doing white people stuff, and I hate that because I'm like, no, that's a human sport. You know, anybody can do it. You know, um, but you know, it's just that's where we are right now. I think it's the perception that is portrayed on media. It's also like I had mentioned before, the cost factor, right? Believe me, how much is skiing, right? Or how much it is to go backcountry backpacking? You have to buy a lot of gear to survive outside, and sometimes that can, you know, deter somebody from actually doing it. I really think that's really what it comes down to.
Do you think that our community is just not interested in that, or like the bulk of our community that's just something that's just not on? And I hate to bring this up or feel like I'm being a little on the nose, but not on their radar as far as things of interest or things to do. Is that just something that just doesn't resonate with our community like that?
Yeah, I had this conversation with someone else, and you know, we were talking about this, but because when you have all these other obligations in life, you know, if you have kids or, you know, you live in a specific part of town or whatever the case may be, you're not thinking about, hey, I should be going outdoors or traveling or, you know, climbing a 14er, right? Mm-hmm. It's just not what's at the forefront of our mind. But, you know, it doesn't necessarily have to be just that, right? You know, you don't have to be doing something extreme to actually enjoy the outdoors. You can do it through walking outside. You can do it through going to the park. You know, you can do it through, you know, as we used to do it, going in our backyards and climbing trees. You know, it can be as simple as that. But I mean, not on our radar. We exercise, we do things like that, right? We love sports, we love track and field. I think anything that we put our mind to as the Black culture, we usually end up dominating it. So I think it's just a matter of time before we start finding our way to the outdoors and learning how well and how great it is for our mental health that we'll start doing it more.
Yeah, and you brought up some of the organizations that you found when you were starting to work around creating your company, and it made me think of this show on Netflix that is called Follow This. It's these little mini docs that they do, and one of the first episodes they did was around Afro Survivalism, and they talked to this girl. Well, she's a woman; she's a full-grown woman. And she was the Afro survivalist. And one of the theories that she brought up around why Black people have lost their connection to like the outside and to nature is because as we were allowed to move into bigger cities, we did just that. And in doing so, we lost all of the skills that we had that were related to like farming and being connected to the land and having that be a place where we entertained ourselves as well, because we became a community that was very much a part of the city. So we lost those things along the way, and it now reflects in how we approach things like the outdoors. And it just made me think of what you were saying around how we now just look at these things and we joke about how like we're doing white people stuff when we're out in nature. When I was in South Africa, part of the trip I was in Limpopo, which is where all of the nature reserves are, and you go out on like these game drives and see the big five, and you're in like an exposed Jeep and you're riding out in the bush and you know, you're seeing cheetahs and lions and and all of these things. And I'm telling people and like posting on Instagram about my experience. And I'm getting messages like, oh, you out there doing white people stuff.
You in Africa, man.
Right.
You in the motherland.
Right.
You
right.
white people stuff, huh?
I'm in one of the blackest places on earth. and yet you have accused me of doing the whitest thing possible. And I'm like, I'm having a great time. And they're like,
Yeah.
wait, you walking out in the bush, you ain't got no kind of protection. You waking up at 5 o'clock in the morning and riding out to see. Yeah, and it was amazing. And it was like,
Exactly.
why wouldn't you want to do that? And it was funny when I landed there. It's this little small airport. You see like monkeys and baboons running on the tarmac as your plane's coming down into the airport. But I met another, it was a black couple there. They were from Atlanta and they were out and they were about to spend a week on the game drive too. And I knew we were like the only black people who probably went through that airport that week. But I think it was right. It was timely that we saw each other so that we could be like, you know what? It ain't just me out here
Right.
having a good time. But yeah,
that's the best feeling when you see other people of color and you connect with them immediately because you're doing something that is you don't see a lot of us doing, and then you see them, it's like, man, I'm glad you out here, man. And it's just, I don't know, it's a sense of pride. It feels good. I love that feeling. It happens every single time I go up to the mountains, and usually I'm up there and I'm hiking, a 10-mile hike somewhere in the mountains, and usually just see other people, white people, Caucasians. And, as soon as I see a black person, we always stop, right? We'll stop, we'll greet each other, we'll have a conversation, we'll even talk about the outdoors as it relates to blackness, and then we'll be on our way. We'll probably exchange numbers and be on our way. It happens almost every single time.
And it's almost like a upper tier of the nod. Like you know how like when you out and you do the nod to folks.
Oh yeah.
But if you out and you in nature and you amongst the trees and whatnot, and you do it, it's a higher echelon nod that you get out and about in these nature streets. But what do you think? What do you think everybody else is missing out on? Like, of course, you see your people out and hiking and doing whatnot, and you're happy that they're there. But what do you think everybody else is missing out on? What's the rest of our community missing out on by not incorporating more nature-based activities into their life?
Life skills that you are going to be able to take with you everywhere you go. If you take the time to learn the outdoors, which what it brings you is one of the reasons why I got into it in the first place was the mental health that it gave me. It really, the stress was gone. It was very therapeutic. I was able to just really condense my thoughts and plan out my life in the outdoors, literally. So it's a very huge mental health boost. In addition to that, when I say life skills, the things that you're going to learn from navigating, right? Learning how to use a compass, to learning how to, just take a backpack with you and live out in the wilderness for 3, 4, 5 days at a time. Learning how to filter your water and things like that are life skills, right? They're going to be hard days. They're going to be very excruciating. I want to give up days, right? So it challenges you to be a better person. It challenges you to go beyond what you thought you couldn't do. And I think that's what's great about hiking. And I would encourage people, even if you think if it's not for you, it's not something, try it out. Try it out. That's how new things become less new and more normal, and people can find strength to actually work together and elevate each other to create change. And I feel like that's another place you can do it is outdoors. There's also a lot of vulnerability when you're outdoors and it's just you and maybe 2 or 3 other people, however many. It's just you and nature. And nature doesn't care about you, okay? Nature's going to do exactly what he wants. So you better work together with the people that you're with, or you can find yourself in a lot of trouble. So, and I think that's what brings that togetherness. And when you're out there for, even if you're doing like a basic day hike, you may be out there for 3 to 6 hours. If you're out there with a stranger, you're going to get past the surface level of, hey, how you doing? Where do you work? You know, all that basic stuff. And you start delving a lot deeper into who that person is and their struggles. And again, you're easily starting to normalize your differences with other people. And I think that's how we can reconnect ourselves with people that we think that are different from us, is through outdoors.
One of the misconceptions I hear from people about, why they won't do anything outdoor based is that I'm not trying to get eaten by no bear. I'm not trying to get, jacked by no mountain lion. There are places you can go where those things don't exist as an issue for you, and you can still have a very authentic nature-based experience. And I think people would just assume that once the lights go down, anywhere where there's trees, that it's an animal ready to jack you up at any moment.
It's very rare, guys. Very, very, very rare. I mean, it's so rare to even have an encounter, to even see a bear, let alone be attacked by one. That it's just very unlikely for it to happen. So, that's something that you should just not worry about. But I get it. When you're there at night, you're sleeping in your tent, and you hear the rufflings of nature at night. It can be a little scary.
Are there any other misconceptions or fears that you hear from people before they do their first experience?
There's not necessarily. Most people are concerned in Colorado about the altitude, right? You come here, it's way different. Every state has a different terrain. So, and the thing with Colorado, there's multiple terrains here. So you can go to the sand dunes and get the desert, or you can go all the way up west, northwest, and ski in the mountains, right? So the altitude here as well, is something that you want to be educated about and you want to know more about it. But yeah, a lot of people are scared to go up the mountains because they feel like they're going to get sick and potentially die, or they feel like they're going to get struck by lightning. Colorado is the second most lightning strikes to hit a person. I think the first is Florida.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
Yeah. So, people are very concerned about that. I'm not scared of a bear or anything like that. You know what scares me? Moose. Huge, gigantic moose.
Oh, so a moose will jack you up.
Man, you don't want to see no. I've had an encounter with a moose at night. So me and my buddy were just hiking at night, and we did some photography, and we were headed back, and had our headlamps on, and it was in Estes Park, and my buddy tells me to stop, and I'm like, what? And I got this concerned look on my face because he's telling me to stop all suddenly, and right ahead of me, I just see the back butt of a moose, and it's huge, right? And he's just right on the trail where we got to hike, and it's just like, what are you going to do? You have to wait for it to leave, hope that it leaves. And he literally sat down on the trail and did not let us pass. So we had to bushwhack our way around the trail just to get out of there. And you just don't know, because if he wanted to attack you, he could have, right?
Right.
And so, yeah, it can be scary. Mm-hmm. Sorry, guys, to scare anybody who's doing this, who's watching, hearing this. It's okay. Just go with multiple people. You'll be fine.
Right. And go during the day on your first couple of forays out into Mother Nature's playground. You had mentioned some of the groups that you came across when you were working to create your company. Can you name some of those again? Some of those groups that were focused on Black communities for those involved in nature?
Yeah. There's Outdoor Afro, and Outdoor Afro is I want to say they're in almost every state. So, if you want to meet other people and learn how to navigate your way outdoors, then definitely Outdoor Afro is a great resource. You can find them online, Instagram, Facebook. But, for Black women who want to, work with Black women in the outdoors, Black Women's Alliance is a great organization. There's also Brown Girls Climb. So if you like to climb, definitely check them out. They're awesome.
Are there more communities out there for Black women than men when dealing with like nature-based activities?
God, that's a great question. I've seen a lot more women, that's for sure. I mean, outdoor Afro is everyone.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, there's not anything specific to men. I've heard of I want to say it's Black men who climb,
Mm-hmm.
if I'm not mistaken. But don't quote me on that. But yeah, I mean, the brown girls climb the Malayan base camp.
You know, it didn't surprise me if there were organizations that were Black women led more so than Black men, because Black women are always the ones who will organize when it comes to doing things that are necessarily new to our community
Mm-hmm.
or the unknown. So I wouldn't be surprised if there was major groups of Black women doing these kinds of things. But
And I'll mention too, there are Black organizations that that are doing almost every outdoor sport that you can think of if you just research it. Especially when it comes to skiing, they come up here to Colorado, and there's this huge event for the Black community where you can go and meet other like-minded Black individuals who hike, who ski, who snowboard. And I think that's definitely an outlet for people who want to learn more.
so what do you think it'll take to have those kinds of organizations get the the coverage and advertising that we see white people having when it comes to things related to the outdoors? How do we change that guard that he talked about in that open letter?
you know, like I say, I see a lot of outdoor organizations that are trying to do more of that. I think it takes individuals like myself who said, I want to see a change, right? I want to see our people doing more in the outdoor industry. It takes organizations like us to be able to reach out to those larger organizations, right? Like your Patagonians, your REIs, and things like that, and say, hey, what are you doing? How can we help? Spread diversification. What can I do? It always goes back to looking at yourself first and doing what you can, and that's essentially what we're trying to do here. Look at self first and do what we can.
What was the moment when you knew you were doing exactly what you were supposed to do with Rising Roots?
Man, that's amazing. Ooh. um, it's funny that you posed that question because I want to say that probably happened shortly. I don't know if it happened when I initially started it because you have these fears, right? Like I was telling you, are you smart enough? Are you educated enough? Are you that person that's meant to be on this platform for change? And sometimes you question yourself when you're going through this process, and sometimes you feel like giving up. It's just a natural process of how change occurs, I think. And I think, I was having this conversation with my partner, Marissa, and we have discussions all the time. We'll sit together and we'll just talk about issues and talk about, how can we change and make it better. And I think it was my experience that happened in Nebraska. And I'll try to be brief with this, but long story short, when I was in Nebraska, me and my now wife were leaving the College World Series, and we got into a little tiff. But we're headed back, to our car in our home. And for whatever reason, nothing serious, nothing crazy, like any regular couple having an argument, right?
Mm-hmm.
And these two cops spotted us, and they ran over like the world was just about to end. And he came up to me and he immediately punched me in the chest, right? And I'm
What?
like, what? I'm not even joking. So I put my hand up and I'm like, okay, dude, we haven't done anything wrong. I don't know why you guys are over here. I just want to, we're leaving right now. No issues, whatever. And he continued not to say anything. Another cop came over and asked my now wife, she said, He said, ma'am, is he trying to hurt you? And she's like, no, we're headed home, like everything's fine. And the cop said, right it in my face. Well, ma'am, a lot of people say that, but they end up dead in the morning. Right.
Oh.
So immediately my guard is up. I'm like, oh man, what is happening? What's going on right now? And, I heard these stories because this was back in like 2013, 2014. And at the time you were hearing a lot of stories about, black men getting shot and kids getting shot by cops. And, at the time, and I don't mind if people judge me for this, I had this thinking in my mind that, like, I would assume most people would if they didn't hang around black people or didn't experience the culture or just understand it or love someone who was black, right?
Mm-hmm.
I had this thought in my mind that, when I saw things like that, maybe he did something wrong, right? Maybe, because cops just wouldn't do that, right? This is kind of in my mind, right? And then so I'm being very respectful to the cop, and next thing you know, he calls backup. And literally, as we were just trying to leave, trying to ask the cop what we did wrong, trying to figure out how we can resolve the issue so we can be let go, right? He calls backup, and I'm asking the cop, why is he calling backup? There's literally no reason to call backup. We're headed home. And then that's when he, without reading my Miranda rights, without even telling me I was arrested, grabbed my hand, slammed it behind my back, right? And then I immediately, a knee-jerk reaction, I grabbed my hand back. Shouldn't have done that. That was the move that sprung everything. He literally slammed me on the ground and started punching me, right? Punching me. The other cop came over, started kicking me. So I'm getting jumped by these two cops. And immediately I'm like, okay, stop. Right. I'm hands out, just trying to like take the blows, but trying to show them that I'm not fighting. So I don't know why you're hitting me, right? And so, the cop gets up, he hits me one more time in the face, and then now, and puts the handcuffs on me. And then that's when the cops come up. And then the first thing he tells the cops is that I spit in his face, and that's the reason. And then that's the reason why all this happened, right? I get locked up. Long story short, I had to fight it for like 2.5 years to a misdemeanor because the cop claimed that I spit in his face, I slammed him to the ground, I beat him up. Like everything he did to me, he said that I did to him. And so we had to fight it for about 2 years just to get it because he charged me with what do you call it, assault on an officer, right? Mm-hmm. So it was a pretty hard charge, and I could have got anywhere between, I think he said 1 to 50 years or something like that, which hopefully I wasn't going to get.
Right.
So we fought it. We got it down to a misdemeanor for resisting arrest, but I didn't even want that, right? I just wanted to get it off my record. I shouldn't have anything. And so that kind of sparked me, Kent, when I was like, okay, somebody saw me as a lesser human being. They thought that I was, because maybe the way I dressed, that, I was about to hurt somebody or whatever the case may be, and went that route. And so I told myself at that point, because I hadn't been into trouble before. I haven't even been locked up before, right? And I was stuck in there for like 2 days, and none of this has ever happened to me before. And I always thought that I was a good citizen. I paid my taxes, you know what I mean? And I was a hard worker. I got promoted in my company. I always said all these things. There was no reason if somebody saw me, they would say, "Oh, he's a good guy," but it doesn't matter, right?
Right.
And so that taught me a valuable lesson, and that what spurred me to say, I am going to change my life, and I'm going to do whatever I can to be better person than I am today. And the fact that I want to be able to do something, because before then the only thing I was doing is going to work, is making my living, and hanging out with friends. I wasn't caring about social issues. I wasn't caring about the Black community and how they were being looked at or rejected or discriminated against, right? And so now that one experience compelled me to be able to say, I need to start doing more, not just for myself, but for the better community in itself.
That experience happens for a lot of people in our community where it's not on their radar until it happens to them, because for all intents and purposes, you had lived an experience where those ideas that you had before rang true, where, you know, I'm doing everything right and it hasn't happened to me. But then when you're doing everything right and it does happen to you, it flicks that light. You know, some people it happens early on. I think for me that happened, that kind of experience happened in 6th grade, where that light kind of flicked on and I knew that there were things that I was going to have to deal with for the rest of my life because of who I was, no matter, you know, what it was I did, good or bad. And for some of us, it happens later on. But tell me, is that the reason you left Nebraska?
Yeah. Oh yeah. That was definitely a part of it. Okay. You know, I wanted to go to maybe a more liberal place, but I've dealt with a lot of discrimination since I've been here too. So it hasn't been any better. I can tell you that.
Yeah.
So, you know, it just opened your eyes, and when your eyes are open, you start seeing things a lot different. You start seeing the way people treat you, the way they talk to you, the way they feel entitled or privileged, right? And it's just, you see all this stuff and it's so clear, and it's like, all right, this is what I got to be changing, because I feel like if my experience helped my now partner for Rising Routes to be able to empathize with what happened to me, so now that she's not, you know, because she never knew that before. She never knew that happened. She thought the same thing I thought, you know, that, you know, maybe something, that person had to do something, you know, and I think that's where the education comes in. And I think I'm obligated as a Black man, not to only try to get accessibility and a better understanding for my people, but for me to take that leap to go and talk to, you know, the indigenous people, or Caucasians or Asians or Mexicans, and say, hey, here are my struggles. These are some of the things that I've dealt with. And I want you to be able to understand it, so that, you know, you're not so quick to judge when things like this are actually happening in our communities. You know, if anything, you need to be an ally for what we're doing.
And you've definitely done that with Rising Routes. So tell the people, if they come to Denver, how can they get on one of your experiences? Where would they find out more information about what you do?
The best way to contact us and to keep in the loop with Rising Route events is to do that through Facebook. Just look us up through Rising Routes on Facebook. Connect with us on Instagram, and you can also connect with us at meetup.com. It's a great space for people to meet up. So meetup.com is another place that we're at. So Instagram, Facebook, meetup.com.
And what kinds of experiences are you providing? I know you do day hikes. Are you doing anything else that's a little bit more intense?
Yeah, we're developing, right? We're still growing, and our hope is to continue to grow, and hopefully next year to start providing more longer excursions. So from backpacking, 2 or 3 night trips, to doing snowshoeing, to creating forums for people to speak and talk to each other, so we can normalize our differences. We do that in coffee shop forums and events. We do that through happy hour events. So a lot of different spaces. We eventually want to be able to start offering courses for people, so you can be able to learn, how can I get started? How can I get educated? So, you know, I can be like you and do this on my own one day. So a lot of that is coming in 2019. But right now, a lot of spaces for open discussion. So like I mentioned, happy hour, coffee events, and as well as day hikes.
Jason, thank you so much for spending some time with me and talking about your experience in this industry and why you got started and why you continue doing the work that you do. Of course, you guys, thank you for listening. If you're listening and you haven't subscribed yet, what are you waiting on? Go ahead and do that. If you've subscribed and you haven't written a review yet, What are you waiting on? Go ahead and do that. Of course, you can listen to this episode and other episodes at our website, ungentrifiedpodcast.com. You can also follow us on Instagram and Twitter at ungentrifiedpod. You can find me, your host, on those same platforms at Kent W. Johnson. Oh, and Jason, where can they find you on social media? Do you have something separate from the company platform, or is it all one?
It's all one. Y'all don't need to find my personal page.
I hear that. But yeah, you guys, thanks for listening, and we'll check you next time. Peace.